Hello and welcome back to the Helpware Nerds podcast. Today we're starting off spooky season right with a horror themed episode. So I had to bring out the Michael Bublé of horror. Do you want to introduce yourself?
He dug me up from the coffin. I'm the queen of Halloween. Hi, I'm Top Nerd, actually.
Yeah, so it only felt right. Like you were on the Witches episode last year. You've talked about everything mythical, magical. It's spooky season. You've talked about your love for spooky season throughout the entirety of you being on the podcast. Like, it just didn't feel right not to have you on a horror episode.
I'm very, very glad to be here.
So, yeah. While some of you might be scratching your heads and going, I thought this was a nerd podcast. Why are we doing a horror episode? I want to preface this to you. What is more nerdy than a group of people who get so invested in a specific genre of pop culture that they make it their entire personality, not just for 1 month of the year, but all year round?
Yeah, horror fanatics are exactly that, aren't they? I'd argue that horror films and the cult surrounding horror films is very much a nerddom in and of itself.
Exactly. Like, it just fits the vibe perfectly in my book. I can't see any other way to describe it other than, like, the epitome of nerddom. I mean, we look at the MCU, right?
Yep.
And you immediately go to the Marvel Cinematic Universe when you look at the MCU.
Of course.
And you think, that is the first time a big universe has been made out of movies. But it isn't. In the 1930s, Universal took their catalogue of monsters and created a cinematic universe of their own with Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, and created a cinematic universe all of their own, to which they've tried to capture again with the Dark Universe when they redid it with Tom Cruise's Mummy and Dracula, the Dracula movie that they redid. I think it was Dracula Untold.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like, they were supposed to be a recapturing of their original cinematic universe. But yeah, so Universal is actually the one that first did the cinematic universe. And it was a Monsters cinematic universe. So technically, they are the original MCU. Marvel Cinematic Universe, Monsters Cinematic Universe.
So would you say then that for you, are you going to say that the horror genre began in the 1930s?
Cinematically, yeah. I think it began a lot earlier when we go into literature.
No. I've not even figured literature. I didn't even put any notes down for that. Ethan, how much time have you got if we're starting to talk about gothic horror and literature? My notes are literally on horror and film and began before the 1930s.
There's horror before the 1930s in film.
Yes, there is. Are you ready for some history?
Go for it.
I get to actually bring my degree into this as well. So I'm very excited. So long-time listeners of the podcast as well will also know that I'm married to fellow nerd of the roundtable, Tom, and I'm pretty sure on his episode where you looked at I think you did an episode on how Marvel films have changed cinema, haven't you? He'll have mentioned his film degree.
Yeah, it was specifically, we talked about Superman, and he talked about how Superman's, like, it wasn't specifically Superman, but it was superheroes in general, and he talked about the Superman movies and how the technology used in that is still used today.
Yeah. I think that's what his dissertation was actually on. But just to preface the fact that, just to basically add some credence to what I'm saying, right now. I have actually just put this history past Tom as well and said, does this ring true to you? So, and yes, it does. So I've consulted someone with a film degree while I've come up with this little timeline of my own. The first actual horror film was a film called Le Manoir du Diable. That was in 1896, and it was by director Georges Millet. I believe I pronounced that correctly. Any French listeners, I apologize for my French. And it's widely actually considered the very first horror film. Although it's more kind of fantastical than terrifying, I believe it was a grand total of 3 minutes long. But yeah, 1896 marks our very first horror film.
That far back, 1896.
1896. And then you talked about the Monsters universe.
Yeah.
And
Universal's
yeah,
Darkverse, yeah.
yeah. However, you have forgotten an absolute classic. Because personally, I would say, you know, there have been sporadic movies here and there since 1896 up to the 1920s, but I'm going to jump forward to the 1920s. 1931 was Dracula with Bela Lugosi. And if you think of Dracula and that kind of very thick Transylvanian accent, most
Yeah.
people will be thinking of the Bela Lugosi character that was created there, or many of the other iterations that have come afterwards based on Dracula would have been Bela Lugosi. However, Dracula is not the first Dracula/vampire movie. Obviously, recently we've had a retelling of this story, but Nosferatu came out first, and that was 1922.
Nosferatu. I forgot about Nosferatu.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and this is where my degree comes in, I would be absolutely remiss to not mention the German expressionist film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which came out in 1920. I watched this film as part of my modernist module on my English literature degree. So, because it basically, that film encapsulates a lot of the themes that were going off in the background of the 1920s. So we watched that film as kind of an introduction to some of the unsettling aesthetics of the time period and compared it against James Joyce. I'll move on. And then we move into your Universal's classic monsters. So this is
Yeah.
where we got Dracula in 1931, we get Frankenstein, we get The Mummy, we get The Wolfman, and that kind of introduced many of the genre's like most enduring characters and kind of what we think of as kind of like the very first kind of branch of what it is,
Yeah.
what the horror genre means, I guess.
The classic horror genre, which still exists today and still inspires a lot of media, such as Twilight, Vampire Diaries, True Blood, The Teen Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of your teen media, really. You can see that it's all inspired by that because Teen Wolf is literally based on the TV show. If you look at the title of it, while it's different in its thing, it's based on the name of the Michael J. Fox movie Teen Wolf of the same name,
Mm-hmm.
which is a comedy version of Wolfman.
It's interesting that you bring those up because I was going to mention this later when we talk about how horror films have changed through time, but we can talk a little bit on it here. 1931 obviously is the original Dracula, which will provide the inspiration going forward for a lot of vampire movies, and they also, like Teen Wolf, like you've just said, was based on the Wolfman. We get Twilight, Vampire Diaries, True Blood, all that will send back to the original Dracula. But 1931 and the Bela Lugosi Dracula will be the first time, cinematically at the very least, that an audience will have been introduced to the lore around vampires. So this is where you get the whole, they have to be invited in, garlic's a problem, stake through the heart, sleep in a coffin. Obviously, that's all in Bram Stoker's novel, but this is the first time it goes to a global audience. So up until obviously I mentioned Nosferatu, but Nosferatu's not a sexy vampire. He's not attractive in the slightest. Dracula 1931 is when we're first introduced to this idea of the charismatic and attractive vampire who comes with this set of rules that you have to kind of be on your guard for, lest you succumb to the creatures of the night, sort of thing. So it's really interesting that it took us less than 100 years to go from this is very scary and beware of this creature to a comedy sexualized version of the early noughties. So yeah, 75 years is what it took for it to be inverted.
I mean, what does that really say about humanity as a group? To me, it just says we're horny for things we find dangerous.
I think that's fair. Horny for things we find dangerous. Well, we can find dangerous now. What,
Serial
what's the next?
killers.
Oh, I've got a whole thing on serial killers. If we're sticking, are we jumping through the timeline, or are we gonna
Like,
go in
if we're
order?
talking about it, like, look at the fact, if we're talking about that in general, look at what's happened in the modern era. We started off with the sexualization of vampires to the point where we basically had this Peter Pan romance with Bella, Edward, and all that stuff, and
Mm.
even in Vampire Diaries, which I actually like, but it's still gross when you think about the age differences, right?
Okay, don't set book talk off. Okay, 'cause,
I know,
yeah,
and I
fairy
know,
smut is
I know,
based on
I
massive
know,
age differences.
I know. But when you look at it from that point of view, right? When you look at it from that point of view, the age differences in all of this is kind of weird and can be off-putting.
Hmm.
So I do get, but getting back to the original point, jumping to the modern era,
Hmm.
you've now got this whole thing of, okay, we've gone from vampires, which were mythologically scary, and we had
Hmm.
this escape mechanism of we just don't let them into the house.
Okay, just don't let them in. Don't. In fact, there's a whole horror film called "Don't Let Them In."
And now we've got this new thing of Dexter Morgan,
Yeah.
for example. They keep bringing that show back for a reason, right?
Hmm.
You've got all these documentaries and people literally thirsting after Jeffrey Dahmer,
Yeah.
which
Can't jump on board with that one. Sorry.
please, someone in the comments that's in that camp, let me know why, because that's weird.
Hey, people, if you fancy the cannibal serial killer, can you just out yourselves in the comments? Yeah, that's not going to happen, is it?
No, it's not, but like, I'm still baffled by that. Like, I don't understand. I've seen it on Reddit and it's confusing.
It's in this actually is a really good point. It's in okay. We'll skip 60s, 70s, 80s for a little bit, and we'll go straight forward then into the 90s on horror films. Because I was going to mention what goes off in the 90s. Uh, very interesting. So we get the rise of serial killer horror movies in the 90s. So this is where your classic Silence of the
Flashes.
Lambs come in. No, slashers are earlier, they're 80s.
Ah.
So yeah, I've basically grouped the horror films into
Genres.
decades. Yeah. But if you put them into their decades, they actually follow the themes for each of the decades. And the
Okay.
90s seems to be much of the rise of the serial killer horror film. So
Okay.
this is where we get a lot of franchises as well. But off the top of my head, I'm thinking Seven with kind of Brad Pitt. And
What's in the
the one I
box?
was in the yeah, but the one I really want to mention is Silence of the Lambs. Now, Silence of the Lambs comes out off the back of a kind of culture of serial killer intrigue and worship. So, 1989, we have, especially, I'm going for America here for anyone that's into true crime. So, 1989, we have the Menendez brothers murders, like the killing of, I forgot the mum's name, but the Menendez brothers' parents. They die in 1989, but the Menendez brothers' trial doesn't start till 1993. At the same time, and that goes on through 94. I'm talking about the first trial. Obviously, they do have a second trial later on, and they're only apprehended in the 90s, 1990. Anyway, they have a lot of delays to their trial. But the first trial, the one where you get Menendez brothers mania and people start writing to them, they become like little celebrities because how can serial killers be attractive? That starts in 1993. You've got O.J. Simpson and the murder of Nicole Simpson and Ron. Oh, what's his surname? I apologize very much that I forgot a victim's name here. It won't be a controversial opinion to say that they 100% were murdered by O.J. Simpson. I think the consensus, most of us agree that he should have been
Yeah.
he should have gone down for those murders, right? But anyway, you have O.J. Simpson and the whole trial surrounding that and kind of serial killer mania at that point. And then you also have the hype surrounding John Benet Ramsey. That starts in 96. And this has come off the back as well of Bundy in the 80s. Around all this time, we get Silence of the Lambs released, which introduces us to charismatic serial killer Hannibal Lecter.
He just
So,
lost his father beans and a nice Chianti.
yeah, you have to do the teeth.
I'm not
But,
very good at that.
a long time alongside Clarice, we're intrigued, we're brought in by Hannibal. So horror movies in the 90s start to play with this idea that serial killer can come with very pretty wrapping, can kind of draw you in. But yeah, so horror films are reflecting what's going off in society, basically, is what I'm saying. I agree with you that there seems to be a romanticizing of serial killers.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm just going off, it's not just in media, like in terms of fictionalized media or like docudramas. That's been a thing with the actual trials of these people too.
Oh yeah, they do that all the time. They've been
Ever since
literally,
the trials were kind of broadcast, I guess.
yeah, they've been making these things bigger and bigger and more public
Hmm.
since the beginning.
I always
And now we
remember.
have tons and tons of true
Mhm,
crime documentaries, podcasts. We're even talking about it on this podcast.
mhm.
So,
I think there's also a discussion to have on basically how far are we going to go with this? Like, where's the line between sensationalizing the serial killer again and highlighting victims? Like,
yeah.
are these shows good because they're showing the stories, they're putting that truth kind of out there, or actually are we now slipping into a point where we're actually doing a disservice to these victims? It's not
Yeah,
really about
I
horror films, but I think it's a separate point that I think's
starting to,
interesting.
needs to be made.
And yeah, and we need to talk about it really. Not us as nerds. That's not
Yeah,
our podcast.
that's not our
Um,
place to do it because that's not our wheelhouse.
it's not all we
But
have. But if anyone is a true crime lover while they're listening to this podcast, leave a comment below. Do you
I
think it's
think
time that we start to
I think
kind
there's
of
a
pull
way we
away?
can bring this into our wheelhouse.
Hmm.
So like there's a example that I want to bring to your attention.
Okay.
At a recent convention, an AI company revealed an AI booth where you could go and talk to an AI representative of Stan Lee.
Oh.
Now, obviously, if you're a nerd like we are, and you've kept up with everything, you'll know that Stan Lee, God rest his soul, has passed on.
Mm-hmm.
So, bringing that back to our wheelhouse,
Yep.
is that ethical to have an AI generated version of the creator of Marvel at a convention and then charge people to go and visit this AI version of him? Especially when you find out that he lobbied against Marvel using the rights of his visage before he died.
That's interesting that he didn't just not give permission, he actively fought against it.
Yeah, so putting the two things together, when you think about like diminishing the thing of the victim and then putting it in the in that frame
Mm-hmm.
so that it is within our thing, it's different, but it's kind of the same thing. You're using something that isn't really about you to somewhat profit.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, it does link back into kind of the history of horror films because recently we're seeing the rise of the theme of AI and technology has
Yeah,
now started to become a theme in horror. Like,
Black
how
Mirror.
far are you going to, yeah, like Black Mirror, like, how far are you going to let things go,
The
basically?
episode where that guy of Black Mirror, specifically, there's an episode where everybody has these lenses put in their eyes, and
Right, yeah.
you can block people, and then the minute you're blocked, you can't see them.
Yeah.
And he helps uncover a killing, basically. But because he committed a crime himself, he gets blocked by everyone.
Hmm.
That's his sentence.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Horror always plays with kind of what's in the public consciousness, like what is worrying people. It always kind of reflects kind of that background. So now we're looking at things like technology. In the 90s, it was, serial killers because they were in the news a lot. We also had the slasher films, and the slasher films of the 80s played with kind of the home, like camps and stuff like that. Basically, holidays, homes, places where you would feel happy and safe. The slasher films of the 80s kind of dealt with that, making them unsafe. So we get a lot of kind of home invasion, horror, Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously deals with being unsafe in sleep.
Yeah,
And the
it deals with dreams and being unsafe in your dreams and stuff like that.
and you get this idea of also kind of late 70s into the 80s, you get The Exorcist and The Omen, which kind of subvert religion. But they also deal around bringing like family
Well,
members, I guess. So The Exorcist deals with like what would you
ar-
do if you're preteen, like the
So,
danger was your teenager. Omen,
ar-
you've adopted a little kid and the danger is the child.
yeah,
Shining, the danger is the dad. So the 70s
and
and
the
80s
hotel.
in the date and yeah, and the hotel. So as in people feel free to agree with me, but I feel that the predominant theme of the 70s and 80s are things that should be safe made
Ah,
unsafe.
yeah.
Yeah, the danger's brought home.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on this
Hmm.
100%. I feel like there are different things here as well. So, as you said, 70s and 80s, you get things like The Omen and The Exorcist.
Hmm.
But we also got to think about, like, if tying it into nerddom as well. Around the 80s, we had the Satanic Panic
Yes.
and things going on with Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
as well. Everybody was throwing that away and say that Dungeons and Dragons was corrupting kids and turning them
Hmm.
into demon worshippers.
Yeah.
So we had
And then,
that happening around the same time. We had things like The Exorcist and The Omen playing on those fears.
hmm absolutely. So it's kind of it everything always plays against each other. And you see that kind of satanic panic even in Stranger Things. now. Like Stranger Things, obviously based on that sort of time period.
Yeah,
So
Eddie.
you can see that in Ed and what happens to Eddie, bless him.
You see it in the
Stranger Things.
trailer. We haven't seen obviously the new season yet because it hasn't come out. But the trailer for the next season shows Eddie's grave being defaced because of Satanic Panic
Mm-hmm.
and Eddie being weird.
Is in obviously this will Stranger Things is going to get its own episode, but if you're a horror film fan, Stranger Things is a great show to watch. Obviously, it's a great show to watch if you're into D&D as well, but a lot of the stuff that goes off in Stranger Things also kind of plays homage to the horror genre
Yeah,
and
it's
typical
loosely
films of that
connected to
period.
D&D to give it that connection to the boys because
Mm-hmm.
that's the game they play. So they give the names of the creatures D&D names,
Mm-hmm.
but none of it's really D&D at all. Like the Demogorgon isn't a Demogorgon at all. Like they look nothing alike.
Mm.
They just call it that because that's the closest thing they can think of.
That's interesting. So obviously, I'm a casual D&D player. But in my campaigns, I've never come across a Demogorgon. I've never done Mind Flayer. I've never done Vecna. And I know for a lot of people that when you play D&D, Vecna's like the big bad behind a lot of stuff. Usually, a lot of
Yeah.
campaigns will build up and up and up to, and especially if you play for years, like the same character, they'll build up to Vecna. So, as a kind of, well, it's not a side note because we're still on theme. The characters in Stranger Things then that get D&D names don't actually bear any resemblance to their D&D counterparts.
Vecna bears a somewhat resemblance to Vecna
Like,
in D&D because he is like a corpse and Vecna
right.
is a lich, which is very similar to Voldemort in Harry Potter.
Okay.
It's the easiest way to explain it to people that haven't played D&D. So Vecna is a lich. He's a walking corpse who put his soul in a different object, like a Horcrux. But he has to feed that thing. He became a god eventually, but like that's a whole story I'm not getting into because that's not the topic.
Yeah.
So the Vecna allegory is the closest to it. The Mind Flayer, though, Mind Flayers are humanoid squid people
Oh.
that eat brains.
So the Mind Flayer of Stranger Things is nothing like the Mind Flayer of actual D&D.
No.
So what you're saying is then that the Stranger Things
They're using the names, but they're not.
So they've got a reference point.
So they've got a reference point to what they're fighting.
Right. Okay.
A Demogorgon in D&D is like a gorilla thing with tentacles.
Okay. That's quite interesting. So, in terms of kind of what D&D's...
At least in 5e, it
Things...
might have looked different in other editions, but at least for 5e, that's what they look like.
Okay. So, for Stranger Things then, I've always thought that a lot of what goes off in Stranger Things is based on D&D. But actually what you're saying is it's more... Stranger Things is more closely linked then to kind of classic horror films.
Eldritch horror.
Eldritch horror, yeah.
Yeah.
So like
Cthulhu.
that would be what H.G. Wells?
No, more like H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraftian horror. Like Call of Cthulhu, that type of stuff.
Okay, more you know.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're playing with the far realm, really. I think. It also explains like the telepathy, the tadpoles.
Yeah.
And all that sort of powers and things like that. Does make me wonder what they're going to be doing soon. And what the final villain's going to be.
But that's going to be a different episode. So
Yes.
if you want to know thoughts on Stranger Things, tune in later on in the year.
Yeah.
But going back to horror then, like how we talked about technology and how that's... What do you think about horror in TV? Because I think actually the horror genre is moving away from movies. I know there is some movies, but I think horror over the past 10 years has done really well as TV series.
Yeah, so obviously we've got The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Which I think we're planning on doing an episode on The Walking Dead at some point. It was such a massive craze that we would be remiss not to do it one. Same with Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. That will probably get its own episode around the time the next House of the Dragon season drops. But basically, I feel like horror has definitely moved to TV. As I said, we've got all that. But we've also got Marvel Zombies, which we've got reactions to. So go check those out if you want to go and see what we thought to them. So that's Marvel's thing. But we've got The Last of Us. So there's a lot of zombies. I do feel like a lot of zombies have come to TV. Because even Game of Thrones deals with zombie culture.
Hmm.
When you think about it, the Whites and
The White Walkers, yeah.
they're zombies.
See, when I said about TV, I was thinking things like American Horror Story, the Mike
Yeah.
Flanagan universe.
So yeah, you've got American Horror Story, you've got Black Mirror, you've got, I'm trying to think of other stuff. You've got spoofs, so you've got Ghosts,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously isn't scary, but still plays with that horror element because they are ghosts.
Yeah, it's in, again, we've mentioned kind of Teen Wolf being spoofs of the Wolfman, but
we've got a lot of witch culture with Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, but Chilling Adventures. You've got Charmed.
And then you've also got the actual spoofs, though. You've got things like Scary Movie.
Yeah. And the big one for me, when we go to TV, personally, when you look at everything that's like come to TV and things like that, and you look at like the horror genre, you've got Ghost Whisperer.
I love Ghost Whisperer.
So, obviously, that is a show about closure, mainly, despite the fact that the show didn't actually give us any.
Feel better about it.
Yeah, a little.
What happened to Rick Payne? I want to know.
I need to know. What happened to Professor Payne?
He's the best character.
They gave us that whole shadow arc, and I know it was supposed to be Jim. I know that's what they were going for, but screw that. Where's Professor Payne?
He was supposed to be coming back, and he didn't. And as far as I'm concerned, he was the best character. But yeah, it's interesting you talk about Ghost Whisperer.
Ghost Whisperer progressively got scarier.
Yeah.
I'm fine with season 1. I'm fine with season 2. 3. 4.
Okay, scariest ghost in Ghost Whisperer.
They sewed eye a lady in season 5. I still have nightmares about her. Her eyes and mouth are sewn shut. That is creepy.
I thought the old lady in the wheelchair was pretty scary.
Oh, yeah. Every ghost in the underground.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's cool you talk about that because I've just mentioned it, but the other show that I think really captured me as a horror fan, and I am scared of it, or parts of it are quite creepy, is The Haunting of Hill House, which in and of itself is also a show about grief, essentially. It's a horror show and it's got a lot of jump scares and a lot of ghosts. I'm not even going to go into, like, there's plenty of people that have talked about the background to Hill House. But Hill House itself, again, is a show about kind of addiction and grief and closure and trauma and kind of how you deal with that. So it's interesting that kind of we've also kind of moved into a realm where mental illness and kind of trauma and those emotional effects that we have as humans, how do we deal with those effects on us? And sometimes the real horror in the horror shows is nothing to do with the actual ghosts, if they're there. The whole question
It's
that
our
a lot
inner
of
demons.
Our inner demons, yeah.
It's what we have to deal with, our inner demons ourselves, that the horror
the
really
scariest
begins.
thing out there is ourselves. Yeah.
All we have to fear is fear itself.
Not quite. But it's interesting, isn't it? I like that. That's where we've got to now. but really this idea of kind of mentally and grief and trauma causing kind of like being kind of a theme of a horror film and kind of identity and mental illness, we could technically link that back to 1960 to Psycho,
Yeah,
where we kind of
Norman
see
Bates.
Norman Bates. That also got its own TV show, The Bates Motel. It's kind of like a prequel.
Yeah, that was a really good show. I liked Bates Motel.
Mm. So it's basically, I think what I'm trying to say is a lot of the kind of horror genre now, it's evolved and it's more nuanced, but the core themes aren't necessarily new.
I liked how in Bates Motel specifically, it was portrayed that his mum was more of the psycho,
Mm.
and that's what drove Norman to be psycho in Psycho.
Yeah, because we never meet Norma. I was going to say spoiler alert, but can you put a spoiler alert on a film that's been out like 60 years? Yeah,
And
Norma.
spoofed in shows like The Big Bang Theory.
True. Yeah, not Norma doesn't exist in Psycho. It's Norman.
Yeah.
But I suppose the Norma we've got to meet is probably very similar to the Norman portrayal of her. But that's how Norman's always perceived her. So it was interesting that Bates Motel took it. It could have taken it to be a bit like she wasn't like how Norman thought she was, and
Yeah.
instead went the other way and was like she was worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that they did that, because then that way it shows that Norman was driven that way. He wasn't born that way.
Yeah, but it doesn't excuse his behavior either, right?
No.
So it's like we can understand why sometimes people do what they do, but
That doesn't
that
excuse
excuse the
why.
actions that they've taken.
Yeah.
What other horror film is it that does that? Is it where we get the backstory? Is it Friday the 13th with Jason?
Yeah, we see his mum.
We see his mom, don't we? And again, that started out as a traditional slasher movie.
She was the original slasher, and then it becomes him.
Yeah, everything's super scary. And then as that franchise evolved, we went back and we saw kind of origins of that. Same as, recently, I think you've got a Final Destination Origins movie
Yeah,
that's come out.
Bloodline. We're getting a Bloodlines.
Which I will say is actually one of this might be the millennial in me, but Final Destination has scarred me. I can't go on escalators. I'm
I
scared.
can't
Well,
go on a sunbed.
I do go on them, but I am scared of them.
I've never been on a sunbed. I will never go on a sunbed ever.
Terrible, terrible deaths.
I hate being behind those log trucks.
Yes. When you're on the motorway and you're behind one of those trucks or anything with like poles where they're like transporting poles, and you think the intrusive thoughts of Final Destination come in and you think maybe this is it for me.
Yeah. Death always gets his man.
Yeah. And again, that kind
oh
of
my
taps
God.
into the fears of kind of
The
doing something really
inevitability.
ordinary. Yeah, the inevitability of death. That you just don't know when it's coming, but it is coming.
I while we're on this topic, because I've got to say, Final Destination has one of the best plot twists in cinematic history.
Okay.
Final Destination, the Final Destination, ending with them boarding the plane.
Yeah.
From Final Destination is one of the best plot twists.
Yep.
Ever.
You spend the entire movie thinking it's a sequel.
Yeah.
Only for it to be a prequel.
It's amazing because you just don't see it coming at all.
No.
Until you see the exact scene from the first film.
One film where they're being carted off the plane.
Yeah.
And you think, oh my God, yep.
He's dead. the plane is going to blow up and he's going to die. And it's because he got on the plane that the events of the first film happened.
Yep. But that's the thing, isn't it? That as I guess as well, like we saw this whole thing being like, how does horror films fit into to nerdiness? And we're not massive nerds for horror films, but we think it's important to talk about it. And then as we've gone on, we're mentioning so many films and so many shows that like we have real opinions about and they've stuck with us.
Yeah.
Basically, I can see how I would buy into the cult of horror films.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe I already have, and I didn't know I had.
We drank the Kool-Aid a long time ago, and we just didn't realize it.
We just didn't realize. We're so deep in, we've not even realized we're there.
To quote one of my cousin's favorite bands, "Welcome to Horrorwood."
Well, yeah, then we've not even talked about the fact that horror movies in themselves then go on to
inspire music,
inspire musicals, inspire fashion.
Yeah. Inspire Christmas movies.
What are you talking about? Christmas movies.
You've got creepy Christmas movies, and you can't tell me that's not inspired by horror.
Oh, you mean like when Santa's the slasher?
Yeah.
I was like, there's a horror Christmas movie, but yeah, actually, think about it.
There are. There's literally Krampus.
Do you know what I went to? And like, it's not a horror film, but I thought you were referencing the Santa Claus and the fact that like they murder Santa.
No, that's not creepy.
Like, it's not really a horror film, but it does start with Santa being murdered.
Watch the TV series. It was all planned.
That's a retcon. We all watched a Christmas film where we watched Santa die and we just went, okay then. Because Tim Allen's in the movie, so it's fine.
Yeah, but it must have all been planned because the elves were okay with it, so...
Yeah. Conspiracy theory incoming. Why were the elves okay with murder?
They had to have planned it out. Like, that's why the show had to retcon it. The elves were just like, Santa's dead. Yay, new Santa.
What's in Bernard's hot chocolate?
What's going on?
It's not don't drink the Kool-Aid, it's don't drink the hot chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I was referencing Krampus.
Right, okay. That makes sense. In side note, but I really want to go to the Krampus festivals, like one of them that happen in Germany. I really want to go do that one year on December 6th. I really do.
That would be cool. But yeah, like, that movie, I watched that on Christmas Eve once. That's creepy as hell, but I really love it. Also, you get the Futurama Christmas special.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and
which
Krampus
is basically the
American Dad
Purge.
as well. Yes.
It's Santa Claus, the Purge. If you think about it, the Futurama Christmas special.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think with that, though, because we're getting on to Christmas here, I think
No, we're not getting on to Christmas. You've made me talk about Christmas.
I did.
On October 1st. How dare you?
I did. More fun surprises like that to come.
Oh, God, now I'm horrified.
And with that, I think we should end this episode. Let us know your favourite horror movie in the comments. And we'll see you in the next one. So stay happy, stay healthy, and most of all, stay nerdy. Bye, everyone.
Happy spooky season. Bye.